as they were having coffee in the atrium about 10 years ago, and they recognized that students needed an opportunity to bring together branding and advertising. And so Prime's mission is to provide students with opportunities in brand management, advertising, and consumer insights. And so I'm thrilled to be able to participate. I look forward to this every year. I also am looking forward to introducing Corey Phelps. He is the new John and Karen Arnold Dean of Smeal. He likes to say he's still drinking from the fire hydrant or fire hose. He's been here for 2 months. So welcome, Dean Phelps.
Thank you, Meg. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for this, what I think is going to be a terrific panel discussion. You know, in a way, I feel a bit like a fish out of water. I'm not a marketer. I'm not a branding expert. I like to think of myself as a recovering strategy consultant. But what I do know, both from research and from practice, is brands matter in a tremendous way, right? They matter in terms of consumer choice, which means they matter in terms of the values that organizations create for customers and partners. And they matter if you care about profitability, which a lot of companies do. They matter in terms of profitability. So they matter. The other thing I know about brands is that they've got to evolve. You know, the competitive landscape is always changing, customer preferences, new technologies, regulations. So great brands, the ones that immediately I'm sure come to all your minds, they evolve too. And I think what we've got tonight is we've got a great panel of thought leaders and experts that work for leading brands that have been able to change and adapt and evolve over time. So I'm really looking forward to this panel session. Before I turn it over to Grace and Allison, who are going to kick things off, I do want to say that I know that we've got a large number of students. I think it was more than 200 I just heard a minute ago. We've got faculty on the call. We've got alumni on the call, some of who are our panelists. We've got former panelists on the call. And the last thing I want to do is I want to thank Gil and Gary Bolno for their generosity for Prime, without which this event probably couldn't happen. So again, thank you all for tuning in. I'm excited for this panel session. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Grace and Allison.
Thank you so much, Dean Phelps. We really appreciate you being here on, I'm sure, what is a very busy evening for you. My name is Grace Brinton, and I'm the Vice President of Prime. I'm joined on Zoom by Prime's Executive Board, who have dedicated several months to planning, executing, and supporting the success of our branding panel. So if you guys want to give a little wave when I introduce you so they could put a face to the name. We have our Public Relations Chair, Lily Martin, Secretary, Alina Hatfield, Treasurer, Stella Yerger, Alumni Chair, Melissa Pham, Social Media Chair, Abigail Morris, and Director of Professional Development, Alice Crandall. Will Taza, who is our president, who led the event planning, unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight, but he does extend his best wishes and hopes that this evening serves as a pivotal moment in our undergraduate experiences. So with that being said, I will now pass the floor to our Director of Professional Development, Alice Crandall.
Thank you so much, Grace. And hello to everyone. We are so thrilled to have you all with us for this evening of insight and empowerment. And our goal is to advance our professional lives by understanding the value that each brand brings to consumers through innovation. So let us begin the panel portion of the event, which is led and moderated by Timmy Gard. And Lily is going to share our PowerPoint presentation. Timmy, if you want to start introducing them, and we'll get that put up on the screen for you.
Thanks, Alice. So we have 5 panelists tonight. We have Nick Baer, who's the CEO of Saxby's. We have Alex Cohen from Comcast, Lynn Field from Future Brand, Linda Nguyen from Unilever, and Caitlin Rush from Meta. I will tell you just a couple of things. 3 out of the 5 are Smeal graduates, and this is Nick's 3rd term on this panel. And this is Lynn's second term on this panel. So we have some repeats, but we really appreciate all 5 folks participating and getting it going. Okay. So this is our 9th panel, everybody. 9 years running, which is really terrific. Next year will be our 10th anniversary, and we couldn't do it without the support of the Prime Group. I'm not going to mention all the names since they were just mentioned, but I've had a pleasure of working with all the Prime members for the past 11 months. We go into action for next year about 30 days after this one gets over, but I really appreciate that. And Jen couldn't really make it happen without you, and Meg the same thing. And Corey, nice to meet you this past weekend at the Alumni Society Board, spending time with you, and really appreciate you making an introduction. All right, here's the format, right? We're going to spend the next 50 or 55 minutes in an open dialogue discussion. Hopefully it's not going to be didactic. Subject matters will be around branding and marketing, research and immersion, leadership, culture, growth, career advancement, development, and the summary from the panelists. As Alice said, there'll be breakout rooms afterwards. Just like a public company, I'm going to make a statement. We are not going to get into anything politically oriented, any political discussion. If we do, I will take it right off. All right, let's go. The definition of marketing relevance: products and services which are regarded as interchangeable or substitutable by the consumer by reason of product, service characteristic, pricing, and intended use. Nick, we kind of saw today in the article from Philadelphia Business Journal, story about La Colombe and not really advancing based upon an in-person experience or innovation. We see many external factors affecting consumer behavior and attitudes and reach, including new technology, artificial intelligence, explosion of social media, influence, or whatever. How has Saxby's maintained its relevancy, and what are the plans to do to make sure that you continue to maintain that or grow that, knowing that innovation is a huge factor?
Yeah, thanks for the tough first question. By the way, Timmy, I am one of the 2 non-Penn Staters, although I'm very proud adopted Penn Stater. We've had the great honor of being a partner of Penn State SMEO for 7 years and operate a bustling cafe on the ground floor of the SMEO building. So, the article that you're referring to, Timmy, today was an article that quoted the founder of La Colombe, which I've known Todd a very, very long time. He's also based here in Philadelphia. He's built an exceptional business, and he actually sold his business about 1.5 years ago to the business of Chobani, which is a Greek yogurt business. And so, obviously, I have a unique tie to Todd's feelings, where he was very critical about the way that La Colombe was being run, because like Todd, I'm the founder of Saxby's, right? So I started Saxby's 19 years ago. And one of the things I particularly liked that Dean Phelps said at the beginning was how, he knows that brands have to evolve, right? And so I've watched La Colombe evolve a lot, and I've watched Saxby's evolve a lot, right? One of the biggest evolutions for us as a business was when the pandemic came. When the pandemic came, we were a business that was highly focused on being a coffee business that hung its hat on philanthropy and hospitality. That's what we did. There was a small core part of our business that also did experiential learning. And we realized that our brand, because of the pandemic, I'm sitting in Center City, Philadelphia, there's high rises all around me. Every one of these had a Saxby's in it before the pandemic. But this world has changed a lot, and our brand had to evolve, not just to be able to stay alive, but to do what it is that we love to do. So for us, that form of innovation was to take our mission, right? The ethos of the essence of our brand is to make life better. It's the only thing as old as the name Saxby's in the entire company, is to make life better. And we went from doing that as a neighborhood coffee business into being an experiential learning business, right? So now we describe ourselves as an education company disguised as a coffee company, and we make life better by empowering and supporting the next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs through experiential learning. So that's been our form of innovation. I read Todd's quotes this morning where he looks in on La Colombe and says, I don't recognize that business anymore, right? It's a legacy coffee business. They're just doing the same thing that they did 5, 6, 7 years ago because he's on the outside and not innovating for that business anymore. So I feel for him, but I realize that that's a huge task for us as branders, as marketers, as leaders to ensure that our business stays relevant, because a good yesterday doesn't guarantee a good tomorrow, right? And constantly evolving what your brand stands for and the value you provide, not just your employees, but obviously your guests, is how businesses not just survive to play and solve tomorrow's problems, but to really thrive in the future as well.
Super. We've learned to pivot this year, big time, with all the explosion of ChatGPT and, like I said, innovation and technology, new ways of doing business, new ways of creating customers, maintaining customers. Analytics is key in almost every business. So Lynn and Linda, one of you can go first. Here's a good question. How do you balance maintaining a brand identity while adapting to new trends and consumer expectations, especially evolving trends that are happening? So Lynn, you want to take that first?
Sure, thank you, Timmy. And yeah, I love that Nick was speaking also about adaptability. So I work for Future Brand, and we are a brand-led business transformation company. And our whole focus is helping businesses grow by connecting their brand purpose and balancing it, carrying it through their lived experience with the brand. So this question that you're asking is central to our work, because in looking at the balance of purpose and experience, we identify and track 18 dimensions over time. And our data over the past 10 years has actually shown that brands who are able to adapt and pivot in real time to maintain their relevance are the ones that have a competitive advantage, because people are more likely to buy from those brands, to pay more for them, and importantly, to want to work for those brands. So it's really about this holistic model and view of a brand that can stay relevant over time by balancing these 18 different attributes. Innovation is absolutely one of those, as Nick just spoke to so well.
Super. Linda, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. I'm Linda. So I work on the sales side, actually. So I'm a customer business manager. So although I graduated with a degree in marketing, I went a little bit of a different route. So I just want to plug that sales is always an opportunity if people are interested in that. But being able to pivot with the consumer is very important. And I'll give an example of that. So at Unilever, Dove is one of our largest brands. So when people think of Dove, they think of body positivity and self-esteem. But when I was working on our hair care business, 1 year in innovation, we had launched a product line that was centered around sustainability and natural ingredients. And when we launched this product, it did not do well, to be frank, because people were very confused. They associated Dove with positivity and self-esteem. So they see this product on the shelf that's surrounded by natural ingredients, and they couldn't really make the connection on why Dove was launching a product like this and why it made sense. So we had to discontinue that pretty quickly. We cut our losses despite putting a lot of investment and money and time and energy into this product line, because we were listening to the consumer. We saw and we heard from them that this wasn't relevant for them, so we pivoted. So I think it's really important to stay close to the consumer and really listen to them. There's a fine balance between being a trendsetter and then listening to what people think the trends are as well. So I think that's very important.
Do any of the other panelists want to weigh in before we move on? Okay, so Caitlin, we're talking a little bit about target audiences and talking about segmentation and knowing who your customer is. How do you go about creating personas when building your brand?
So, I mean, tactically, right, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about thinking about creating your personas and identifying them, defining them. But you want to back it up, and it's really about just knowing who your customer is first and foremost. And it's starting there and getting in those shoes. And I would argue in some ways, you might not want to over segment your audience, right? You don't necessarily need to slice and dice and and overthink it or overcomplicate it. Certainly you can think about, and you want to think about, what are the different segments or the different audiences that you do have, and where it does make sense to differentiate them could be, where is there a product positioning differentiation for you? So do you have different audience segments that really think about or use your brand or product markedly differently from one another? I think a great recent example of this is Pedialyte, actually. You've seen them come out really strong. And, I grew up, you think of Pedialyte as the thing your mom and dad give you when you're not feeling well. Now they've come out and they're, positioning themselves more strongly against Gatorade, for athletes and people working out. But also for people who are going out and having a good time, right? They're positioning themselves as a hangover cure. So those are three distinct segments where something like that is where that actually makes a lot of sense to segment your audience. So, Tim, to your question about thinking about segmentation, my first prompt would actually be to, when you do segment, before you go into actually dividing up your audience, make sure that you're doing so really strategically and that you're not inadvertently, creating these unnecessary cohorts of your audience. I'd say, when you do that, you down the line can cause a lot of unnecessary headaches for yourself it can make media buying harder. It can make needing to create different, creatives unnecessarily more challenging. But when there is a real need to, then of course you've got some unique opportunities for growing markets and increasing certain pockets.
Super, thank you. Alex, we influencers, social media, huge. This might be a little bit of an offbeat question, but something I've been thinking about. Actually, I'd like to know the answer. Storytelling is a huge part of marketing, but is it really storytelling or is it story asking?
Yeah, I mean, I look at branding as you're trying to create a emotional connection between your business and the consumer. And, we do that through storytelling. That we know that the time and attention of consumers is becoming increasingly more difficult to capture. So to compete, brands need to adapt their marketing strategies to build long-lasting emotional connections. And we do this through storytelling. Our research shows that brand awareness or brand memories are key influencers for consumers, and that people rarely make decisions using only information available at the point of purchase. So consumer purchase decisions are almost rely entirely on existing brand memories. And to be bought, a brand must first be thought of.
Okay, thank you. Nick, just in a couple minutes, what's the difference between branding and marketing?
Well, another thing that Dean Phelps said, I'll sort of parrot is I'm also not a branding expert, right? I'm a government and economics major who is sort of a self-taught entrepreneur. But I think that like the essence of a brand is standing for something, right? Like how do you actually differentiate as a business, right? And I think that that's what I try to spend a lot of my time doing. We say all the time at Saxby's to walk the talk. You can have values, you can have all kinds of talk and chatter through your marketing, but if it really differentiates and it's different from what your brand actually stands for, you're not gonna have much progress or success. And so I think part of my job as the founder and the CEO of the business is to sort of help set the tone from a brand and culture perspective by walking the talk, right? And then marketing is the manner with which you communicate what your brand actually stands for. And it's funny. I think it was Linda who mentioned sort of a mistake in sort of marketing around the Dove brand at one time, and that like really stuck with me because this is something that we've been struggling with at Saxby's for quite some time now, especially as we went through this transformation of being a mission-driven coffee company to being a certified B Corp education company, right? I think that in many ways, we were stuck marketing our business the way that we used to market our business and how most consumable food and beverage businesses market their business, right? Which is, we have this amazing new cold brew. We have this really innovative, new grilled cheese, which is fine. But if you've got something even better than that, that's where your marketing should exist. So for those of you that are on campus, if you go into Saxby's or any Saxby's that matter, we just for the first time ever launched a marketing campaign that's actually based less on product and based more on the why Saxby's exists. We exist for students and by students. And that's actually the tagline of this marketing campaign. And you'll constantly see in POPs throughout the cafes, on the menu boards, it will show you what you can buy. And then it'll flip out and say, join these panels where you can hear from our illustrious list of former student CEOs about what this experience was like for them and what it's led for them from a career perspective. And so, pulling this back to your question to me, marketing, I think, cannot be successful without a clear, defined, differentiated brand. But just because you have a clear, defined brand doesn't mean you're going to be great at marketing either, right? Those two things have to be aligned. And we finally have built the courage and had the vision at Saxby's to start to market the ethos, the essence of what Saxby's actually stands for, which is an education company disguised as a coffee company. And I think as a result, we look at our business, it's probably similar, I'm sure at Meta and at Comcast and at Unilever. Comp sales is a big thing that we look at. So what did we do on this day of revenue last year? So we're constantly looking at comp. We're breaking company records for comp revenue. And I don't think that I think it's directly correlated to marketing, the real differentiation point of Saxby's. I couldn't be more proud of our team, particularly our marketing team, for coming up with this great campaign.
Anybody else?
Jump in on that, Tim. I think that's a fantastic way to compare and contrast branding versus marketing. I just wanted to add, Nick, that what we see with our clients is one of the top reasons that rebrands fail is that they are approached as a marketing exercise, not a holistic branding exercise, which absolutely has to be about walking the talk, just as you described. The bar has never been higher for brands to live up to their stated purpose and values than it is today. So I think that's an incredibly helpful way of thinking about it.
Well, coming from a real expert, that means a lot to me, Len. So I appreciate that. It's funny. When we did this transformation, we actually referred to it as a brand evolution versus like a rebrand, right? Because I think that it's part of, to Corey's point earlier, like brands have to evolve to be able to survive and ultimately thrive. So hearing you sort of echo that's really great.
Branding is about defining your identity, who you are, your values, the emotional connection you create with your audience. It's long-term and shapes perception and loyalty. I look at marketing as about promoting and selling your products or services. It's action-oriented, focusing on campaigns that drive awareness, engagement, and sales. So when you kind of look at the difference there, branding builds recognition and trust, while marketing drives immediate action and growth.
I would offer an additional perspective as well. Absolutely agree with everything that's been shared as thus far. But you could also think about branding. Your brand is to an extent outside of your control. It's what people say about you when you're not in the room. You can influence that with your marketing. And if you do it right, and if you have a strong brand and you have strong branding built through your marketing, ideally what people say about you when you're not in the room and you're not around and your ad isn't there and you don't have all of those marketing pieces influencing them will match what you have marketed and what you would say when you are in the room, right? But I would think about kind of those two pieces being the differentiators, right? What, Alex, what you were talking about earlier, right? With the pieces of what's top of mind, and that being part of your brand, right? Ultimately, you don't have control of that. That is outside of the latest ad that you've shown them. That is certainly influencing it. But it is like the sum total of all of the experience that they've had with you that you've built over time. And the way that you really build that really good brand is through consistency over time, and being really sharp and really strategic. And it's through all of those marketing efforts that you get that strong brand message that it doesn't matter if you're in the room or not, they're saying what you would want them to say.
That's why brand safety is so important, and ensuring that my brand's content and advertising, or at Comcast, the content of brands that advertise with Comcast, are placed in environments that align with brand values and don't do harm. Because like you said, a lot of it is about what are people saying about you when you're not in the room. And if you have your brand up against, potentially, we're not going to get political, but like fake news or controversial political material or hate speech or things like that, it can do real reputable damage that can't be undone.
Great conversation, guys. Terrific. It's really good.
And I just
Kind of
wanted
leads-
to add one more thing to that while we're still on this topic. I think the importance of marketing too is just the so what to your consumer as well. Just because think about us as consumers, we are inundated every second of every hour with ads on Instagram or billboards or wherever you see marketing. So it's really important in that limited time that you have to convey that message to consumer. Like, what do you want them to take away from this? What do you want the message to be so that they can remember that for the future, whether it's when they're buying your product on the shelf or in the store?
Well, that's perfect. That's perfect, Linda, because I was about to ask you the next question, which Chauncey
Sure.
leads into how important are measuring the results? How important are analytics, and what's different today in terms of measuring than they were a couple of years ago, and what do you foresee in the future for the buzzword analytics?
Yeah, I think analytics is important because it's not only a measure of how well you are doing compared against your competitors, but I think as Nick said earlier, like how well you are doing against yourself too. Like every year, over year, you want to make sure that you are improving, you are listening to your consumers, you're giving them the products that they want, and you're delivering results in that sense. So I think it's really important to really follow the data, but there's so many different pieces of data that you can look at. So like in my business, for example, I make sure that units is very important to me. So not only like are the dollar sales, but like units as well, because that means people are actually buying the product regardless of how expensive or inexpensive it is. So I think that's a key metric to understand what you are being measured against so that you can work towards that goal.
Super. Caitlin, we talked early on, sometimes we forget there's another group that's very much involved with products and services. How important is it for the sales and marketing teams to be integrated and aligned on the brand in terms of what needs to get done?
Yeah. I know Linda mentioned that she is in sales. I previously was in a sales role. I'm in marketing now, so I have gone back and forth on both sides of the line. And I mean, the short answer is it's incredibly important, right? It is insanely valuable. Also tying into what I was mentioning earlier, right, about the need for consistency and that your brand is ultimately built up over these thousands of tiny interactions, right? That requires an insane amount of discipline from your sales team, from your marketing team, that everyone is singing from the same song sheet, that they are all running in the same direction together, that if someone is getting an interaction or touch point from your brand through a salesperson or through a piece of marketing collateral, that it feels like it's all coming from the same place. These don't feel wildly, out of line or out of touch with one another. So, to have that strong brand, to achieve that goal of people talking about you when you're not in the room in the way that you want them to, you need that consistency and you need that discipline and really that lockstep arm in arm between marketing and sales.
Super. Alex and Nick, this is kind of like both for you coming in a different direction, but how do you measure brand satisfaction, engagement, and awareness?
Well, I partner with a third-party research firm on an annual basis, and we do brand studies of the Comcast brand and then the different subsidiaries underneath to test how is our messaging, our own personal, marketing and messaging working year over year. So measuring perception, awareness, consideration. Have you been exposed to any of our thought leadership, our branding, our marketing over the past certain number of months? And, it goes in ebbs and flows. And then we obviously measure that against our competitors as well to see where we may be making hay. And I think the greatest thing is also when we ask different, advertisers or agency people who are looking to buy from a company like Comcast, we focus on their pain points as well. What are they not maybe getting from some of our biggest competitors that then we can kind of latch on to and emphasize even more in our marketing or in our thought leadership.
Nick?
Yeah, obviously, I completely agree with everything that Alex said. And obviously, coming from Comcast, they've probably got a lot of tools and resources to be able to constantly be looking at that and have smart people like him, looking and evaluating those things. I think from our perspective, I think it's a two-step process for us, right? Is like we're in arguably the most competitive segment you could be in, right? Most people are just going to put us sort of in the category of coffee. You think about how many places that you can get coffee. The quality of coffee has risen so significantly over the last 10 years. So for us, first and foremost, we have to have a phenomenal team, right? We call them team members at Zaxby's, but for the sake of parlaying, it's like employees, right? Like we look very, very closely. We do sort of monthly reviews with all of our team members. Obviously, I look very closely at turnover reports, not just at the corporate office, but just as more importantly at our teams, at our individual cafes, right? Because we can't market ourselves or take care of our consumers if we don't have a cohesive team that believes in the brand and walks the talk. So I think that's one thing where I look very closely at from a brand perspective. Who is representing our brand? How much do people want to work with us? How well supported do they feel? What does their tenure look like as a business? And then secondly, how well are we executing on that at the consumer level, right? I've got a good friend of mine who's the president of Campbell Soup, which is right across the bridge here in Philadelphia. And one of the things he always laments to me is he's like, God, Nick, it's so much easier for you to talk to your customers because you could just go into a Zaxby's and literally talk to them, hear what they say. He's like, I have to go and try to stalk them in a grocery store and figure out whether they like V8 or whether they like our soup. And so we do a lot of listening directly with our consumers, right? So all kinds of surveys on our apps and obviously our Google reviews and all of those different kinds of things. And so we are always doing lots of listening and direct communications and focus groups with our consumers because one, that's how we hear how we're doing. Two, it's also usually where the best ideas come from, right? Like what are the consumers looking for? How do they feel about our prices? How do they feel about the array of our product? And being able to get that and get that continually allows us to evolve and be not just a great employer, but a great seller of product as well.
And Nick, just to add on to that, and touching upon what Caitlin had just said and kind of getting everyone internally in line, every employee within an organization is a brand ambassador, whether they're directly working on the brand or in Nick's case, if you're the CEO of the company or you're a barista behind the counter, you are an embodiment of the brand. So before you go out in the market, it's important that everyone internally is bought into who we are and what we represent.
Actually, it's an amazing point. I wish I was making that first, right? But we always say at Zaxby's, everybody's a marketer, right? So even if you're the newest team member at one of our newest cafes, or you're the student CEO of one of our cafes, or everyone in between, everyone is a marketer, right? And so that is such a perfect point that you make. And I think that the truly great companies, their team members at all levels of the organization feel like they're brand ambassadors and they're marketers.
Super. Let's move on to a different subject matter and talk about leadership. And again, I'm going to ask first Linda and Lynn, but if anybody else wants to join in, want to talk about that. I'm sorry. Lynn, how do you define leadership?
For me, leadership is creating the environment that allows a team to do their best work in support of the business. So at the highest level, that's how I think about it. So I'm all about empowerment and just equipping the team with the tools and resources they need, and then being there to really coach them, but let them go. We have clearly defined behaviors at Future Brand that set our expectations. It's about like expect and inspire brilliance, dare to fail, things like that. So we're pretty clear about the what, the guardrails around what's expected, but then it's up to the team to collaborate in service of that together. So as the leadership team, we're just about creating the environment for that to happen.
Linda?
Yeah, I think that was a great way to summarize it, being able to foster and create an open and welcoming environment. I've been with Unilever for 8 years now, and I've experienced a lot of different leaders and different leadership styles. And I think the biggest takeaway that I've seen is that a lot of leaders want to work with you, and you don't want people to feel like they're working for you. It's kind of like a team environment, and you're working with them for the same goal. So I think that's really important. And as you progress throughout your career, you'll definitely find your leadership style and what works for you and what your strengths are and what opportunities of development there are for you as well. So I think it's always evolving. It never stops, just that learning experience to become a good leader.
Caitlin, you want to jump in on that? I see her nodding her head a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of that resonating with me. I have view of, servant leadership, certainly, right? That you are there at the service of the people that you are leading. If they are not there, that by definition, right, you cannot be a leader. I think oftentimes leadership requires you, I think inherently that there needs to be a component of change, most likely, for you to truly be a leader. I think there needs to be components of challenge, and for you to be the one to be able to navigate through change and challenge on behalf of a broader group and get them aligned on that direction that you are going together, and that you are ultimately doing that for some greater good, some greater cause, right? And that there is an aligned vision and mission that you're working towards and that you're advancing for that.
Thank
I
you.
love that so much. Can I just comment? I used this word servant leadership, and I actually think if this is your natural inclination, to the students here on the call, if you're a person, what is that saying in sports? Like, if you want to be do you want to be a star or a champion? Right? So it's not about you as the individual star. If you're truly the person who wants to be part of a team and then together you're going to go farther, this is the mentality and the attitude that can help you stand out in this business, which a lot of times is crowded with people who are the star wannabes, who are talking a good game, who are trying to be the center of attention and always trying to look like the smartest person in the room. That person will only get so far and eventually found out. The people in this business that I see get the furthest have the attitude that Caitlin just talked about. Like, how can I be of service to this team in support of our goals?
Thank you.
Timmy, I can't help it. That's such a powerful question. And, as I mentioned before, like our mission at Zaxby's is to empower and support the next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs. Like, this is literally what we do. So Ava, our student CEO at Penn State, she is the CEO of a 60-person team. They serve 600 guests a day. So in her 6 months as a student CEO, they're going to serve almost 60,000 guests. Like, think about how many interactions that is. And she leads 60 people. She's never been a leader in any organization because she's 20 years old. She's never had the opportunity to be able to do it. So we're in the business of training and empowering leaders. And everything that the panelists said is spot on. I will reiterate, great leaders walk the talk. A lot of people think that leadership is about just giving all the right talking points. But if you say one thing and do another, everyone who works for you, everyone who's supporting your business will see the difference. But great leaders are also, they're humble, they're authentic, and they are consistent, right? Consistency is not sexy, but the greatest leaders, if you think about your life, the leaders that you can count on, that you learn the most from, they're really consistent, right? And I think that's what we pride ourselves on. And Ava, who's our Penn State student CEO, is just another phenomenal example of a great leader.
Before we go on to career advancement development, this is like one of my favorite questions because I always like to know the answer. I'm going to ask Caitlin. Caitlin, how do you fix or enhance a company culture?
This is so timely. I'm actually currently on a task force focused on culture and communications for an organization at work. So first, I will share the same thing here that I just shared with this organization of 350 plus people in New York 2 weeks ago. One, there are no passengers in culture when it comes to the workplace. So culture is built by the way everyone shows up every single day. And that can be really challenging, right? It goes back to some of the leadership pieces, right? Getting everybody to run in the same direction together. That said, there is a lot in company cultures that does start at the top. And that is set as the example and is infused by the way that leadership shows up themselves and the example that they set. That said, right, with how you change it when there is a challenging culture. So start by starting to that point I was saying at the beginning of that, there are no passengers. It is built by the way we show up every single day. Start with the way that you show up yourself and the energy that you bring. What is the culture that you want to exist in your workplace, in your environment, and begin to exhibit those actions, do those things. I I think it is important, right, when you do have that leadership buy-in that wants to make that concerted effort, to really be, very intentional about it. When you look at things like, it gets very like personal development, self-helpy, right? It's very introspective, that both at the individual level, and then you start to apply those things at the cultural or at the organizational level, right? So you start to think about, what are the actual values of my organization? So within Meta, the marketing organization as a whole, our values are rigor, pride, and fun. And it is straightforward and as simple as that, which I will also say is like a great lesson in branding and marketing, right? I can recall those off the top of my head. It's not a bunch of corporate jargon and a bunch of words, but those are the three things that you can show up every day. You're going to be rigorous, and that the work is going to be good. You're going to be proud of what you do, and then you're going to have fun doing it. And so, those things that you can instill both from a leadership perspective, as well as no matter where you are in the organization, you can just influence by the way that you show up every single day.
Super. Next series of questions I'm going to ask everybody to answer, because I think they're really critical to the audience, the 200 some odd students that are watching. So I'm going to start at the top of the screen with Lynn. Lynn, what advice would you give to students who want a job in marketing?
For my world, in branding agencies, we sit in between sort of development of the strategic plan or business plan, and then the development of the marketing plan or advertising. So I'll answer the question more focused, if it's all right, on my world where I can advise. So for people who are interested in brand strategy, these days it's a crowded, difficult market. My advice would be the two best ways in are through advertising agency account management roles, or analyst roles at a consulting firm. So if you're seeking to get into the kind of work that we do here at FutureBrand, we typically hire people who have at least 2 years of experience doing one of those things before they come into my world. So unfortunately, it's a bit of a step beyond students just graduating, looking to get into brand strategy. So those would be two paths forward to brand strategy.
Alex.
I would add sales to that as well. Add sales.
Yep.
Caitlin, you want to jump in next? That's okay.
Sorry, I just interjected myself. No, like I said, to that list of sort of entry points in the sales is another one. It's one of those that is just a very people-focused function and need, that tends to be a high volume of them. My biggest advice, and this is for marketing, I would actually apply this to any job seeker, is curiosity and an openness, willingness, and ability to learn, demonstrating that and showing that, particularly in entry-level roles. There is little to zero expectation that you come in knowing how to do everything, but if you are able to demonstrate what you do know and your ability and nimbleness to learn and adapt quickly, that to me is the real difference maker for entry-level roles.
Alex.
I'd echo what Lynn said in terms of when you're starting out, because I know a lot of the students here are trying to figure out where should I do internships or things like that. I think starting out at an agency or in a consulting firm and having the ability to work on multiple brands and just see how different companies kind of tackle the problems they have, or you learn about different industries, is paramount at the beginning of your career. In terms of like the immediate now for the students in the room, I would say there's two skills you really want to kind of continue to work on constantly. It's storytelling and data analytics. I would advise everyone who wants to work in brand to take a creative writing class, because no matter what brand you work in, or if you move into a sales role, you need to be a good storyteller. You need to be able to develop a good pitch. And taking creative writing classes kind of just really exercise those muscles for you. And then as we talked about earlier, being able to dig into the data and pull out those little nuggets that can prove that something worked, and that you can then turn that into strategy recommendations for your leadership team.
Awesome. Linda.
Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice is to really just be open to new experiences and to really anything that may come your way. When I was a marketing major student, I really pigeonholed myself. I was like, I'm going to be in brand marketing. Like, that's the only thing that I want to do. And I remember the professor, Dave Winterick, I don't even know if he's still a professor, but I hope he is. But he said, like, you don't know what you don't like until you do it. So when I joined Unilever, I was in a rotational program, and it was both marketing and sales focused. And I did my marketing role, and I was like, you know what, maybe this actually isn't for me. Like, I wanted something a little more boots on the ground. And then I did my sales role, and I was like, yeah, like, this is actually more where my strengths lie. This is where I actually want to be. So it's where I pivoted to sales. And like I said, that was not anything that I thought I was going to do in college. Like, sales was not on my mind at all. So I think it's just really important to be open to those new experiences, because you don't know what you're going to like and what you're not going to like until you try it.
Super. Nick?
You're sort of wasting your time asking me, Timmy, because those answers have just been phenomenal. I will just sort of highlight a couple things. What Alex said about data analytics and creative writing. If I were a student on this, I would write that down and be actioning that right now, right? I mean, that is incredibly, incredibly important, because I think that there's this concept, it's a human concept, that busy is the same as productive, right? But it's not, right? It's making sure you're doing the right work with the right outcomes, and that's where the analytics comes in. People don't rise in their careers unless they're great writers, unless they're great communicators. And so I think that those are such amazing points. I love that advice that a professor gave to Linda. You don't know what you don't like unless you do it. Like, so go out there and say yes, and take roles, take opportunities. The one thing I will share as my own sort of idea here, I guess, is that, for me, I'm the founder of Saxby's, right? So what we look for in great marketers are really people who are great brand ambassadors, right? Like, are you just applying here because you're just applying to a lot of places? Or is Saxby's the one place you want to work, and why? Right. So we just posted an entry level, marketing role. We have 350 applications already for it, which a company our size is a lot. That might not be a lot to Unilever and Comcast, but to us, that's a lot. The finalists who make it to me for the final interview will not get to me unless they have proven authentically and passionately to each of the interviews they go through why Saxby's is the place for them. Why are they going to be a great brand ambassador? So that's what we look for in great marketers. So make sure that you're aligning, the right company that you want to work for, and bring that data analytics, bring that creative writing, and you're going to not only get great jobs, you're going to be phenomenal at them.
So we have 5 minutes left, and this question I would like everybody to answer. It's kind of like how Jen and I started this whole thing 9 years ago. It was what was on my mind about real world applicability. And we'll start at the top again with Lynn, and that is, what advice would you give to these students that they're not going to learn in class from Professor Malloy or Professor Coupland?
Well, they're going to learn a lot from them, of course, but I would say the number one thing I would say is, yes, take your classes and do the work, but also you need to be a student of people. Someday, you're going to need to be selling your way of thinking and your ideas to a wide variety of people. They might be the salespeople versus the engineer or marketers who we were talking about earlier, or people who think like you, but they might also be more like artists or financial analysts, right? Like you're engineers. You're going to need to adapt your style to those different types of people and their way of thinking. And now you're in an ideal time in the environment you're in to be able to do that, right? Whether it's collaborating with different types of people on projects, different types of professors who have different kind of styles, maybe you're doing internships, your extracurricular activities, study people and figure out what makes them tick, their worldview and the frameworks they apply to making decisions. Because believe me, that will pay off in the years to come, because the better you are at doing that, the more successful you will be in bringing people over to your views. And the second thing I would say is this is a golden opportunity to learn these really important models that you're being taught that you will use throughout your career. But what you learn when you get on the other side is that in the real world, no single model has all the answers. This is a very dynamic, fast moving, constantly changing business. Every day is different than what it was the day before. And so it's invaluable that you're going to get there at SMEAL, like these solid underlying principles, but don't be too married to them or too rigid in your way of thinking about them, because they will be one of probably a suite of frameworks and tools that you end up using throughout your career.
Super. Alex?
I would say become comfortable with being uncomfortable. The beauty of being in college is that you can try a bunch of different things, and there's going to be a lot of things that you don't like. I started out my career, and my entire focus at college was to work in sports, and I worked for Penn State Athletics. I did a number of sports-related internships, and then ended up working at Major League Baseball. And 3-4 years out of college, I was out of sports. So now is the time to really put yourself in uncomfortable situations and kind of test yourself a little bit about things you may like, things you may don't like, because when you get out, you only have this opportunity once at Penn State for maybe 4.5, 5 years. When you get out, it's a very fast moving industry, as Lynn said. And I think the ones who are able to embrace being uncomfortable are the ones who go further.
Super. Linda?
I would say soft skills are extremely important. I think when you're looking at job postings, like they'll say things like proficiency in Excel or other different systems. And obviously those are important, but I think all of those things can be taught, whether that's like a webinar or educational session or whatever it may be. But I think it's really important that soft skills are not as easily taught. So like Alex said earlier, like the ability to storytell or being personable and leveraging your network. So I think make sure that you are continuing to refine those soft skills as well, because that's what people look for in interviews, in members of their team. They want to make sure that these people are people that they want to work with and that they can grow with together. So I think it's important to pay attention to the soft skills too.
Super. Let's bring it up with Caitlin and Nick. Caitlin?
Yeah. Building on what Linda and Lynn both shared, right, about working with others, learning about others, I'd say the other side of that coin, also learn about yourself. I think being very introspective and being self-aware is an incredibly valuable skill. So, taking time to do things like, there's 100 different, Myers-Briggs, Clifton Strengths Finder, whatever speaks to you, do multiple of them, figure out what different themes and things emerge. One is incredibly helpful just to get a clear articulation of your own values, your own skill set, etc. But it can also be a real confidence booster and help you sort of move through the world and figure out as you are working with those others, where do you fit into that bigger puzzle?
Super. And Nick?
All amazing, right? Like know about yourself, put yourself in uncomfortable positions, develop your soft skills. When you at first asked this question to me, my mind went to one place. And I was like, this is a little too out of left field. I needed to sort of get a better answer. It is the right answer. You need to be in forward-facing customer service roles, right? Oftentimes you're going to see that in hospitality. Ask most people who run most large organizations in this country. They'll tell you that their job in hospitality might have been the most formative experience they had. Jeff Bezos says all the time, his best job he ever had, the thing he learned most from, working in McDonald's as a 16-year-old, right? Because you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to work in teams. You're going to work with people that have very different backgrounds, going very different places than you. You're going to learn a lot about yourself. And that's the only way you're going to develop emotional intelligence. Penn State SMEAL says the best professors you can get, no one's going to teach you emotional intelligence sitting in a classroom. No one's going to teach you resilience sitting in a classroom. You put yourself in an uncomfortable position, work with teams, and do those things. That's what employers are looking for, right? Like NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, been around for 60-some years. Employers have never cared less about GPA than they do today. In fact, they care half as much today as they did 5 years ago. Not because the classroom experience is unimportant. It's incredibly important. But they know if you go to a place like Penn State, you're getting a phenomenal in-classroom experience. but you need to differentiate yourself with emotional intelligence, with resilience. You have to be able to put those two things together. And it's amazing what a customer-facing hospitality role will do for you and for your career.
Super. Well, I think we reached our limit. I think we're right on time. I'm going to turn it back to Jen at this point.
Yes, Timmy, thank you so much for the questions were dynamic, and I loved hearing all the discussion among all the panelists. In my notes, I actually wrote the word phenomenal. So I do appreciate everyone who's participating in this panel. I know it's time out of your evening and a lot of preparation, and we appreciate all of that you're imparting to our students. We do have some breakout rooms that are set up so that you can meet the panelists in meeting rooms. So I think Alice and Grace might take over from here and tell you about that. Thank you.
Well, first off, I want to say thank you so much to our panelists and to Timmy. That was amazing. You guys had very insightful things to say, and we all appreciate you guys being here. So if you guys go into the Q&A section, Lily posted a comment, and it has all of the Zoom links. So you guys can just click on one of those. If you want to join multiple of them, I recommend copying and pasting it for later into the 30 minutes because you won't have access to these links anymore. And then I'm also going to share my screen right now so that you guys can have access to our QR codes for an exit survey. We would really appreciate if you guys could fill that out for us. And also the attendance code. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now.
And while you're doing that, I'll just mention, so Caitlin Rush was Meta, Linda Nguyen was Unilever, Nick Baer is Saxby's, Lynn Field is Future Brand, and Alex Cohen is Comcast, just in case you need to match up the names. So I wanted to let you know that. And you can feel free to bounce around to the different rooms as well. Great, thanks so much. So, Grace, did you have anything else you wanted to mention?
I think that was it. Just remember that you're not going to be able to get back in to see those Zoom links again. So make sure to copy and paste them. And then whenever you guys are ready, you can just log off. Same goes for the panelists. Do you guys have access to those links? Are you guys all set with that? Okay, perfect. I'm just going to leave this up for a little bit.
Okay, Ralph, did you?
I think we have a hand.
So I think you should be able to unmute. Did you have a question for us?
No, that's okay. Great panel, great discussion. Now I'm just going to jump into one of the meeting rooms, but just wanted to thank you all for this valuable input for our students. Okay, I'm a professor here, and I just loved hearing about the realities of the excitement and the challenges of the career in brand management. Thank you for sharing this with our students.
Sure.
That's all.
It was a great group, wasn't it? Thank you so much, Ralph.
Thank you.
So I'm going to copy these links over myself. And I think we should make sure we hang on to them in case anybody comes back looking for them.
Thank you all. This was phenomenal.
The conversation was just, I was taking notes actually partly because I teach a class tomorrow where I thought there was a lot that was covered that's directly relevant to the project and to a lot of what we talk about in class. And I just kept typing because everyone said something that I thought was a quote I could use in the class. So really, really do appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, Timmy and Jen, obviously great job coming up on 10 years on this, right? And having the level of student engagement that you have is such a phenomenal thing. But to the Penn State Prime student leaders, phenomenal job, right? I do a lot of panels. This was incredibly well organized and communicated. And I think, the involvement and the conversation you guys created is a testament to your hard work. So it's a really nice job.
Truly, I think a lot of them.
We're also going to pass that message along to Will as well.
Yes, it's great. Yep.
Hey, cool. I was drinking from a fire hose today because I had no idea how I was going to come out of the gate. So I didn't know which way to go, but there was a really interesting, to me, it was going to be all about innovation and relevancy. And this morning when I saw an article about that, it was just like, that's what happens. And that's the way these things go. It's, there are no easy questions for anybody because business is, right? We pivot all day long. We work with different DNAs and different people. And, to me, it's having the students understand that. I think, Lynn, you really talked about that with people. We're all in a people business, right? No matter what we do. And you're not going to learn that necessarily in a classroom when you get in the real world, but as much as we can give them for setting expectations is key. Be interested to see how the breakout rooms go now too.